वैसे ही रहने दो इसको। अच्छा, ये अच्छा लग रहा है, चैट भी तो पढ़नी होती है। ओके, hello everyone, this is Pulkit, the history faculty at the Vedanta IS Academy. As you all know, we are doing a module on the world history portion for the mains examination. And why exactly I am saying the mains examination? Because at the cost of repeating myself, I am again stating the fact that world history is not asked in the prelims exam, but it is only a part of the mains examination, right? So that is how exactly we need to approach the world history portion, right? And in the world history so far, what we have done is, we have done an introduction to the world history in which we have seen that how exactly the colonization of America happened, right? And after that, we have done another important topic known as the American Revolution. We have done American Revolution, its causes, its impact, everything was being done by us. And then we went on to do the most momentous revolution in the history of Europe and the world. That is the French Revolution in the year 1789, right? And we also have completed the rise and fall of Napoleon, right? The rise and fall of Napoleon was from the year 1799 until your 1815. That was a time when the Battle of Waterloo happened, and he was then exiled to the island of St. Helena. And in the island of St. Helena, what happened is, he died in the period of 6 years, that is in 1821, he died. And when he was at St. Helena, he was actually busy writing his memoirs. He was busy writing his own autobiography, right? So that was the thing which was happening at the St. Helena Islands with Napoleon. So this is what we have done till yesterday, right? But I also told you that what we are going to do is, we are also going to study another important thing about Napoleon, that is his reforms, right? That is his reforms. Why exactly we are interested in doing the reforms of Napoleon is the fact that he had died in 1821, or you can say that he passed into the oblivion in 1815 after the Battle of Waterloo. But what we need to understand is that his ideas, his what you can say, that his methods of rule, his techniques, the things which he did, the roads he built, the communication networks which he established, all these things are still very much there in France, right? And some portions of it are an inspiration for an entire world, like his codification for the law, right? His judicial reforms, they even proved beneficial for the countries like India, right? So that is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the reforms of the Napoleon, that the reforms of the Napoleon have outlived the person himself, right? They have been much more influential than Napoleon himself as a character in history. And that is something which we need to understand when we are talking about this particular portion, right? Okay. So I'll tell you one more interesting idea. So when I went to France in 2015-16, right? When I went to France, so there's actually a museum. There is actually a museum in Paris, which is approximately, I think if I correctly remember, that is approximately 1.5-2 kilometers, right? The museum is spread over such a large area in Paris. And that particular museum, as it was told to me by the tour guide, that it was established by Napoleon. So that is something which we need to understand, right? And also what I observed in Paris was that the area just in front of Eiffel Tower is actually similar to that of India Gate, right? It's similar to that of India Gate, that it has a clear road in front of it, and on either side of that particular building we have great lawns, right? We have plants and everything, right? So all these things were actually created by Napoleon, right? So this is what we need to understand, right? The universities established by Napoleon, they still survive, right? So all these ideas are going to be discussed in the class today. So after discussing Napoleonic reforms, what we are going to do is, we are going to cover in 10 to 12 minutes an important event which occurred after the decline of Napoleon, that is the Congress of Vienna, 1815. That what exactly happened in the Congress of Vienna and what was the motive behind that particular Congress. So after completing this particular idea, we are going to come to another important topic in world history, that is the Industrial Revolution. We are going to focus all our attention on Industrial Revolution after that particular Congress of Vienna. So this will be the modus operandi for today's class, right? So now let's start the important idea of Napoleonic reforms, right? Napoleonic reforms, right? So what exactly were the reforms which were being done by him? So the first reform is in the field of administrative reform. Is in the fields of administrative reform, right? So that is something which we need to understand, right? Ab administrative reforms hain which are important for our field of study. Then there is judicial reforms which are important for the field of study. Then in the administrative reforms itself, we have educational reforms, right? So educational reforms are included in this. Then there are religious reforms, and then there are economic reforms, right? All these things were actually being done by Napoleon during his short stay at the throne of the France, and that is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the Napoleonic reforms. Let's first of all start with administrative reforms, right? Let's start off with administrative reforms. I'll just give you 1 minute to write this down in your notebooks if you haven't written it. Then we are going to come to the administrative reforms, so that you know कि हाँ हमें इस वाले सब टॉपिक्स में उसके रिफॉर्म्स को पढ़ना है. Okay, I hope you have written it now. Let's go on to discuss the administrative reforms which he did, right? First of all, we need to understand the background, as you already know, in which Napoleon came to the throne. So Napoleon came to the throne amidst the chaotic situation in France. There was no stable government in France. People were actually getting frustrated. People were not having the security that they are going to live the next day. They were not having the security कि भाई खाना मिलेगा या नहीं मिलेगा. If they are eating in the morning, they were not sure whether they are going to get food in the evening or not, or in the afternoon or not. So that was the major concern of the people. When the revolution started, everybody was very, very happy. But as soon as the revolution and its ideas started to progress, what happens is, we have very, very quick changes in the political game. We have very, very quick changes in the political ideas, which led to the instability, anarchy in the French society. Now what Napoleon did was, he promised stabilized government. He promised stabilized government, right? He told the people of France that I am going to provide you a stable government, right? So that is what he told the people, right? And also he told them that ideas of revolution will be kept intact, right? He said whatever was being preached in the revolution, whatever the ideas we had in the revolution, those ideas will be actually kept in mind. That is what we need to understand, right? तो उसने सबसे पहला काम क्या करा? After coming to the throne of France, what he did was he centralized the whole administration. He centralized the whole administration, right? सारी की सारी administration he centralized, right? So when his advisors told him कि sir आप तो वही monarchy वाला काम कर रहे हो, where exactly you are following the ideas of revolution, then he told people that look, at this particular point of time, the people of France, they want security, they want equality, they want food on their plate, they do not want liberty, right? They do not want anything which compromises with their healthy living in the society, which compromises with their peaceful existence, right? So he said, if I want to establish this healthy atmosphere in the society of France, then what I need to do is I need to take the control over all the administrative ideas in the country. So that was the first thing which he did, right? He centralized the administration of France, right? So that is what we need to understand. And also he curbed the liberty. Also he curbed the liberty of people, right? अब उसने बोला that up till now everybody was allowed to write anything, say anything, do anything which they wanted, right? तो उससे प्रॉब्लम क्या हो रही थी? That there was an anarchy in the society, right? अब क्या होता है? If you are allowed to say anything, do anything, right? So it might cause problem in the society. Like for example, if a riot is taking place in the city, in a particular city, riot is taking place, तो government सबसे पहले क्या करती है? In today's context I am talking about, government actually it cut off the internet connection, or it actually restricts the use of social media. It says that we are not going to provide you with the internet services for 48 hours, 24 hours, 56 hours, whatever the government decides upon that. Why? Because social media is such an instrument in the hands of the people that it might have negative effects also. Like people might write something which might not be very good in communal harmony, very good in promoting communal harmony rather, right? That might be something which might lead to even more chaos in the society, right? So at that particular point of time, you need to take back the liberty of the people, and that is what Napoleon was doing, right? Initially he was doing all this for maintaining a peaceful society, but later on, as the time progressed, he also became an absolute monarch in the society, right? वो भी धीरे धीरे जब उसे दिख रहा है कि I have all the powers in my hand, so he also became like other people only. He also became an absolute monarch. So that is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the administrative reforms of Napoleon. That he centralized the whole administration, he curbed the liberty of the people, right? एक example और देता हूँ कैसे. 1791 में, if you people remember, there was a constitution which was written for France. ठीक है? In that particular constitution for France, there was a provision which was given. उस provision में ये बात कही गई थी that the local administration, the people looking after the local administration will be elected. What I'm saying, you need to understand, they will be elected by the local people of that society or of that particular city. So there will be an element of election in that particular local administration. But as soon as Napoleon came to the throne, what happened is he said that such elections and everything will not be any more tolerated. He took back this provision of election of the local administrative bodies. What he did is he himself appointed officers for the management of the local affairs, right? All the mayors, all the local political authorities, everything, they were now being directly appointed by Napoleon himself. So that is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the administrative ideas of Napoleon. Yes, Anil, I think I have answered this question when he centralized the administration, right? I haven't seen the question yet, but yes, I think I have answered this particular question. So this is what we need to understand, right? So he centralized, he curbed the liberty of the people also. The press and its content were now being restricted. Like I told you the example of social media. Same way the newspaper played a very, very important role during the time of 18th century, 19th century. So newspaper was the first thing which was being censored by the political authorities if they do not want any sort of chaotic situation. If you see, the similar kind of thing happened in India also, right? What happened in India exactly was that now when in 1860s, 1870s, right, people started to become more aware about the exploits of the British Empire. So they started to publish their ideas in newspapers, in magazines, in journals, right? All these mediums became the mode of expression. So what the Britishers did, how exactly the Britishers retaliated was that they enacted various press acts, right? They enacted various acts which curbed the printing of that particular material. For example, they said that if any newspaper, if any native language newspaper is found to publish anything against the British Empire, then that newspaper will be kind of closed down, right? So that was the basic idea. So now the newspaper started to publish things which were not exactly against the Britishers, right? But slowly and steadily they found a way out, that how exactly to express their opinions and yet not get censored. So this is how exactly the things were going by. So newspaper in those days and social medias in today's era, so these play the same role, right? These are the first thing which the government tries to restrict as soon as there is a chaotic situation in the society, right? So this is what we need to understand when we are talking about the centralization of the administration. So press and its content, they were also kind of centralized, right? Now each and every officer in his administration, Anil, this is for you. I'm just giving another example. Each and every officer in his administration, they were being appointed by Napoleon himself. Napoleon actually appointed these officers after checking their merits, right? After checking whether they were capable of being appointed as a particular officer in this particular department. So order of merit also became an important cog in the wheel in the Napoleonic administration. But what we need to understand is that these officers were being appointed directly by Napoleon himself. So this was another example of your centralization of the administrative functions. That is something which we need to understand, right? So this is in the administrative reforms. ही सब चीजें हो रही हैं. साथ साथ में in addition to these administrative reforms, इसमें educational reforms भी इस इंसान ने करे. He also started the educational reforms, right? educational reforms were also being done by him. Educational reforms. अब exactly education reforms में क्या करे, right? Educational reforms में इसने एक बहुत interesting चीज करी, that he centralized the educational system in the country, right? He told that from now on, only the state will be responsible for the education in the society. Church will not be doing this particular duty, because earlier the Catholic Church or any kind of church was responsible for such an activity, was responsible for promoting education in the society, for spreading education in the society. The church was responsible, but now he took this educational reforms in his hand and he centralized how exactly the education was being imparted to the people. He started to oversee कि कैसे चीजें लोगों को पढ़ाई जाए, right? क्या syllabus होना चाहिए. Everything was being decided by Napoleon. Many schools, many good schools, many universities, which even continue till today, they were being opened by Napoleon, right? That is one thing, that is one aspect of the educational reforms, जो कि हम reforms की तरह देख सकते हैं. लेकिन एक बहुत famous statement है that Napoleon was the child of revolution as well as the destroyer of the revolution, right? So आपको एक बहुत simple example से समझाता हूँ. If you see educational reforms, right? So educational reforms में what I told you people is he centralized the educational system. He centralized the educational system. That is something which was being done by this particular person. New schools and colleges, everything, universities were being opened. Church was separated from the task of education. Church was being separated from the task of education. That is something which we need to understand. पूरा का पूरा education system was now being centralized. So the quality, the syllabus, everything. So the syllabus, activities, etc. were closely monitored by him, right? He took it upon himself that I will see that what is being taught in these schools and what is not exactly needed to be taught in these particular schools, right? तो यहाँ तक जो उसने काम करा, that he improved the educational system and everything, that was good. But आपको यहाँ पर एक inherent चीज समझनी पड़ेगी. You need to read between the lines in here. यहाँ पर मैंने एक लाइन लिखी है, syllabus, other activities, etc. were closely monitored by him, right? It was being closely monitored by him, right? So what he started to do is, he started to teach the syllabus, which the subjects, the things in schools and colleges, which are going to favor his policies, right? He began to teach students in such a manner that they will only see Napoleon as a hero. They will not see him as a villain, right? So their minds began to be shaped in such a manner that they began to see Napoleon as a hero, right? Napoleon ने कहा कि the most ideas of the students, of the people, for the state, for the political authority in the country, they are being formed in schools and colleges. जैसे schools and colleges में पढ़ाया जाएगा, like the history or political science, all these subjects are being taught in school. जिस तरीके से स्कूल में इन्हें पढ़ाया जाता है, that is how exactly your mindset becomes, right? You start thinking in a particular manner, right? तो नेपोलियन ने कहा, no other thing will be allowed, only the people will be allowed to teach and read what I tell them to read, right? So basically he was not trying to promote Napoleonism. He was not trying to promote a kind of educational system in the society which is going to produce people who are going to in turn favor him, who are going to see him as a hero. So in this manner we can see that the statement which is very, very famous about Napoleon, that he was the destroyer as well as the child of the revolution, seems very, very apt by seeing this particular idea, right? So this is how exactly his educational reforms can be seen. Okay. Before I move forward, I am just going to take question by Khushi. Khushi is saying, sir, please repeat how he controlled revolution by centralizing. Yes, Khushi, we need to understand this, that centralization means that you are controlling each and everything which is happening in the society, right? You are now trying to control each and everything which is happening in the society. You are not letting anything happen without your will, right? आपके मर्जी के बिना सोसाइटी के अंदर एक पत्ता भी नहीं हिल सकता, right? And if you see, when I was telling you about the administrative reforms, Kushi, we saw that he was trying to curb the personal liberties of the people, right? And he was also trying to put censorship on the press. He was also trying to put censorship on what exactly the people can write, people can express their views, right? तो जब तक व्यूज ही नहीं होंगे, कुछ लिखा नहीं जाएगा, अगर लोगों को पूरा फ्रीडम नहीं मिलेगा टू एक्सप्रेस देमसेल्व्स, और नेपोलियन हर एक एक्टिविटी पे, हर एक ऑफिसर पे उसका पूरा का पूरा कंट्रोल होगा. सो दिस इज हाउ एग्जैक्टली ही विल बी ट्राइंग टू कंट्रोल the whole society and not letting it go into anarchy, which happened after the revolution, right? So this is something, Khushi, we need to understand, right? So this is a very, very important idea. So educational reforms and administrative reforms are important ideas of the Napoleon's regime, right? Okay, now let's understand other things. One thing before I move forward to the reforms of Napoleon. You see that education is a kind of tool in the hands of the powerful people of the society, right? What they try and do is, first of all, whenever someone comes to the power, what they try and do is, they try and trim, add to the history syllabus, what is being taught in the school. First of all, which every regime which comes to the power, what they try and do is, they try and add certain characters in history, they try and delete certain portions from history, so that people can only understand what these powerful political authorities are trying to preach, right? What powerful political authorities want is that nobody should rebel, everybody should revere them as hero, right? That is something which we need to understand, and you can actually take example of such kind of control. So such kind of control can be actually seen in North Korea, right? Where you are not allowed to use internet apart from certain websites. Schools, their calendar, everything is being controlled by their dictator Kim Jong-un. I'm just saying Kim Jong-un, their dictator, because he might be alive right now, he might be dead. We do not have the clarity because he was in coma. So there's a kind of confusion whether he's alive or not. But yes, the system which was started by his grandfather, his father, they wanted to kind of promote loyalty towards the king, towards the dictator. So even the calendar which the people in North Korea follow is something which is similar to the birth dates, which is similar to the death anniversary, everything of the previous dictators, right? So that is something which we need to understand. And also you need to know one more important idea, that you are not allowed to wear jeans in North Korea, right? Jeans is not allowed in North Korea. Okay, I'll take other questions also, then I move forward. So Dipayan Chatterjee says, we can say that because of Napoleon, the French society is way ahead of its time. Yes, Dipayan, that cannot be denied at all. You need to understand that the ideas of Napoleon, the things he tried to do in the French society, these were something which were ahead of its time. Now when we see judicial reforms, we will see, Dipayan, that the codification of the civil law, criminal law and all these laws, right, by Napoleon in France was an example of how exactly he was way ahead of his time, right? So Napoleon is someone who can be seen as way ahead of its time, right? Okay. Fine. Yeah, Prabhakar. It's more like communism. Yeah, perfectly right? So communism, yeah, communism is form of a dictatorship which is going on in China right now. North Korea is again an example, right? So this is what we need to understand. There are many other examples which I can give, but I'm like not in a proper space to give that right now. Okay. Divya, as far as the notes of world history are concerned, the point is I have already given the notes to the people in the management. They said they are going to upload those notes on the website. So you need to check the notes from the website. If you don't get the notes, please mail me. I am going to give you those notes. That is not a problem at all, right? Okay. So Shubham, I'll just come to your question. Manorika, I'll just answer your question. So what reason the genes are not allowed, right? Because I just want to discuss this. So Manorika, you need to understand, and others also need to understand, that genes, like jeans was, first of all, I think was manufactured by Levi's. So Levi's was someone who was American. So jeans actually became a symbol for the factory workers, right? For the working class people, right? Jeans jo hai na, that is something which is made up of rough and tough stuff. Ab kya hota, when I was in college, what we used to do is, we used to wear the jeans, ठीक है, कहीं भी, I was in Hindu college, so क्या होता था, कहीं भी बैठ गए, कि नेस्कैफे में बैठ गए, कहीं भी ग्राउंड पे ऐसे बैठ गए, उठे ऐसा थोड़ा बहुत झाड़ा, and then we move forward, कुछ खाया, हाथ ऐसे कोई हैंकी निकालने की पॉइंट नहीं है, जीन्स से ऐसे पहुंच लिए, मतलब you actually wear that particular jeans for 5 to 6 days, right? You can actually wear that jeans. So jeans is something which was a symbol of capitalism, of a factory worker, of a working class people, right? So jeans is equal to capitalism in North Korea. That is why people in North Korea or the dictator actually tries to follow the idea of communism. As Prabhakar already said, that he tries to follow the idea of communism. So communism and capitalism are two things which are very, very opposite to each other. In fact, it was because of capitalism that we see the rise of two major ideologies, that is socialism and communism, right? In which Karl Marx said that what we need is, we need to empower the working class people of the society. He said that the resources of the society are only within the hands of few people in terms of capitalism. What we actually need is that these resources should be properly and equally distributed amongst the working class people of the society. So that is how exactly capitalism and communism are always against each other, right? Okay, tell about Levi's. Okay, next I'll just come to your question. First of all, Shubham. Okay, Shubham, I think I told you this yesterday also, the point, or I knew someone else, if I remember it. The point is, Shubham, that people started a revolution, right, in 1789. They started a revolution, I agree with that. But the point which we need to understand is that the revolution has been going on for the last decade now, right? So there was an economic crisis, there was like people not having enough food, there was anarchy in the society, the European coalition was attacking France, right? France was in a constant battle with others. So, right, so amidst all this background, as I told you, in the rise of Napoleon, the factors which led to the rise of Napoleon, he promised something to everyone, right? He promised people that I am going to uphold the ideas of revolution, and at the same time I am going to provide you with peaceful situation. So now the people were so frustrated with their existence in those particular 10 years that they were now looking for an option. They were now looking for someone who could solve all their problems, who could solve all this chaotic situation in the society. So that is why they went in with Napoleon. That is why the statement has been given, Shubham, that Napoleon was the child of revolution as well as the destroyer of revolution. People at the beginning, they actually supported Napoleon, but Napoleon took advantage of this support, like undue advantage of this support, and started to do what the others were doing, that is turning himself into a absolute monarch, right? So same way, the same thing happened with Hitler also. You see, Hitler promised people, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this and all that. But in reality, what we need to understand is that he was just a dictator, another bloody dictator who was trying to do things only for his own personal benefits, right? So same way, Napoleon was also trying to do the same thing, right? Okay. Nishna wants to know about Levi's. Okay, I'll tell you, Nishna, just wait, I'll tell you. Let's move forward. Okay. Now the next reform being done by Napoleon was judicial reforms, right? Judicial reforms. Okay. So judicial reforms के अंदर जो सबसे important idea which Napoleon did was that he codified all the laws. He codified laws in terms of your civil code, in terms of your criminal code. All these codes were actually being defined. This is why exactly this is being happened, because the people were frustrated, or rather confused with feudal and royal laws. People were confused with feudal and royal laws, and at the same time, the constitution which was being made was not properly implemented. That is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the judicial reforms. So अब क्या हुआ? अब नेपोलियन ने कहा कि ये सब प्रॉब्लम्स लोगों को फेस करनी पड़ रही, राइट? People have to actually face this particular problem. So what he did is he formed a committee, right? He formed a body, and after formation of that body, he hired legal experts. He hired people who were aware of the legal intricacies, right? Legal matters के ऊपर लोगों को उसने बुलाया, and then when he hired those legal experts, so under his supervision, under his guidance, these legal experts started to work. They started to work, and slowly and steadily what they actually came out with was the codification of laws. What they came out with, the written laws, right? Written laws in the fields of your civil code, criminal code, and civil code, criminal code, and commerce code. As far as the codification of law is concerned, if you people remember, when we were doing modern India, I told you people that codification of the laws actually mean that now same punishment will be given to the person who is committing a particular crime. अब पहले क्या होता था? If there are two people, person A, person B, right? I'm taking an example from say India, right? This person belongs to higher caste. He belongs to your lower caste, right? Higher caste and lower caste, right? अब इन दोनों ने same crime, they have actually committed the same crime, right? And now they will go to the local judicial authority or they will go to the local king, whoever is there. अब इनके पास क्या होगा? दोनों को सामने इकट्ठा करा जाएगा, ठीक है? अगर इन दोनों को सामने लेके आया जाएगा, ठीक है? अब क्या होगा? इन दोनों ने चाहे सेम क्राइम करा है, लेकिन जो हायर कास्ट का इंसान है, he will not be given a very severe punishment, or there are very high chances that the higher caste person might not be punished at all. He might not be given any sort of punishment. That is something which we need to understand. And the person B, the lower caste person, he will be punished very, very severely, right? Why? Because there was no codification of the law. There was no specified idea कि हाँ ये crime करने पे यही होगा, ये crime करने पे यही होगा, right? So that is what Napoleon was thinking about, that the law should be equal for each and every person. There should be no inequality in terms of whether a person is rich, whether a person is poor. So all these things should be kept in mind when we are talking about the codification of law. So what Napoleon did is, which was the bestest thing which he did, was the codification of the laws in the three spheres, that is the civil code, that is the criminal code, and the commerce code, right? So this is what we need to understand when we are talking about the judicial reforms, right? So what it did is, it favored equality before law. It favored equality before law, and later on it proved to be an inspiration for people all around the world. Example, during the formation of Indian Constitution, right? So Indian Constitution somehow is inspired by the Napoleonic codes, or the things which were written during the time of Napoleon. So that is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the reforms, judicial reforms of Napoleon, right? Now let's move forward. I'll just give you a minute to write this. In the meanwhile, I'll have water, and then we are going to move forward. Yeah, so these are some of your judicial reforms. Now let's move forward. Yeah. So next is your economic reforms. Next is your economic reforms. So economic reforms के अंदर what he did is, first of all, he established Bank of France. He established Bank of France, promoted free trade and industrial revolution, right? When he came to the throne, he understood that now there is a need for mechanization of the production process, right? So he started to promote the whole idea of industrial revolution. And if you see, and we will see it, that the Industrial Revolution in England started in 1760s, and the Industrial Revolution in France will start only after 1800s, right? Only after 1800 that the revolution in France will start. So there is already a gap of 40 years, right? So 40 years is a very long time. That is why Britain will always have an upper hand, at least at the starting, right? At the starting of the 18th century, 19th century, in terms of trading aspect, in terms of its economy, right? So English economy was in a much better health as compared to that of the French economy. So that is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the economic reforms. So Napoleon now realized that there is a need to promote industrial revolution, right? Okay. And also at the same time, what he did was he promoted uniform tax policy, right? He said that if I try and put a uniform tax on each and every commodity which is being traded in the society, तो उससे होगा क्या? That the traders will also be encouraged to kind of trade, क्योंकि उन्हें अब हर एक सिंगल जगह पे हर एक स्पेसिफिक पॉइंट पर टैक्स देना पड़ेगा. They only have to pay the tax once, right? So he adopted this uniform tax policy. इससे क्या होगा? इससे जो trading activities हैं, they will actually get a boost. और साथ साथ में इसने क्या करा? अब क्या है, आपका जो इंडस्ट्रीज है, आपका जो ट्रेड है, that also depends upon your transportation and communication, right? That depends upon your transportation and communication. That is something which we need to understand, right? तो इसने क्या करा? What he started to do is he started to build highways. He started to build roads. अब ऐसा बोला जाता, there is a specific figure that around 1810, 1812, there were approximately 299 very broad highway kind of roads in France. Very broad highway kinds of road in France, and along with that, the canal systems were being kind of upgraded. The canals in France, which actually act as a means of water transportation, they were being upgraded. That is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the French Emperor Napoleon, that he even improved the transportation and communication means. So this is a very important idea in terms of your economic reforms initiated by the Napoleon Bonaparte, right? Now let's move forward. Right? So now let's move forward. The thing which is left with us is now the religious reforms. Religious reforms, right? So religious reforms के अंदर सबसे important चीज which Napoleon did was that he told people that look, you can actually exercise whatever religion you want. You can practice whatever religion you want. You are being given the liberty to choose your own religion, to practice your own religion. There will not be any kind of pressure on you people to practice any specific religion, right? So he actually gave people religious liberty, right? And at the same time, Napoleon realized that the church, the Catholic Church, whose power was being destroyed during the time of revolution, destroyed during the time of revolution, or the people who stopped the church from exercising its influence, that actually needs to be reinstated in the French society. Why? Because he said that religion because he thought in his mind, never said that, but he thought this in his mind, that religion, that to the Catholic religion, which had the maximum followers in France, the Catholic religion can actually help him, that is help Napoleon in promoting his rule. In promoting his rule, kaise? Because what he was actually planning was कि वो Pope को install कर देगा. He will reinstall Pope in the French society, and after reinstalling Pope in the French society, तो आगे क्या करेगा? That he will keep the control of the Pope in his hand, right? He will keep the control of the Pope in his hand, and after keeping the control of Pope in his hand, he will tell that particular religious person or religious head of the society that you should say all this, you should do this, you should do that and that, right? So whatever Napoleon wanted these people to say, these people will actually say in Sunday prayers, right? In daily prayers which were happening in the churches, right? उससे होगा क्या कि नेपोलियन के बारे में उसकी इमेज that is going to get very, very glorified. अब religion ही क्यों? Because religion, you see, has a very, very strong hold in the minds of the people, right? So you can make people do anything in the name of the religion. It hardly takes 2 minutes. It will hardly take 2 minutes for anyone in the society to start a communal riots, right? You can just stand on the road, say something against anybody's religion, right? And the crowd will just jump into that without even thinking कि exactly ये बात क्यों करी गई है, इसके पीछे का context क्या है. So that is what we need to understand, that religion occupies a very, very important position in the minds of the people. So that is how exactly Napoleon wanted to use religion for his own benefit. Otherwise, the properties, the lands, and whatever was being confiscated during the time of revolution from the churches, that was not given back to these particular people, right? And even their appointment was being done by Napoleon himself, right? So this is what we need to understand when we are talking about the religious reforms of Napoleon, right? So in the end, when I conclude this particular topic, right? When we conclude this particular topic, what we need to understand is that Napoleon was trying to tell people that look, I am just following the ideas of revolution, that I am going to follow whatever was being preached in the time of revolution. But slowly and steadily, when he got the powers in his hand, he started to get away from those particular ideas, right? He started to get engaged in too much of warfare. He started to get engaged in absolute control of the state, right? He was now actually doing all the things which had been earlier rejected by the people of France. But he had kind of controlled the minds of the people in such a manner with all these reforms that people up till a point were not able to protest against him, right? They were not able to say anything against him, right? So he created a cadre of officers, he created a cadre of people, students, everyone who were actually seeing his activities as that of a hero, as that of someone who was glorifying the prestige of France. So that is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the Napoleonic reforms, right? So now let's move forward to the next portion, which is a very, very small portion, not exactly a very big portion. That is the Congress of Vienna, 1815. We are now going to move to a very important thing, which is the Congress of Vienna, right? Ab kya hai? Congress of Vienna was actually being done by those particular people who were afraid of the ideas of Napoleon, who were afraid of the ideas of your French Revolution. So basically it was France versus your Britain, your Austria, Prussia.
India's #1 institute, Vedanta IAS Academy. Coaching for UPSC, Civil Services, State PCS for 12th and graduation student. Online smart classroom. Live class with Android app. Vedanta IAS Academy. Contact number 9911753333 or visit www.vedantaiasacademy.co.in. Branches at Rohini and Mukherjee Nagar, Delhi.
Sweden, Russia, etc. Right? France versus Britain, Austria, Prussia, Sweden, Russia, etc. Right? So this is what we need to understand when we are talking about the Congress of Vienna. अब हुआ क्या? After defeating Napoleon, now Austria, which was having a very powerful minister at this particular point of time, known as Metternich. He was having a very powerful system, or he was a very powerful minister. The Austrian minister Metternich, after defeating your Napoleon, he decided that जो चीजें चलती आ रही हैं, जो चीजें पिछले 15 से 20 साल में हुई हैं, that is from the starting of the French Revolution, they should be now stopped at once. जो भी सारी एक्टिविटीज हैं, आइडियाज हैं, उन सबको एग्जैक्टली हमें अब खत्म करना पड़ेगा. उसने कहा if we are not going to end all these activities now, then these ideas are going to prove as a deathbed for the absolute monarchy. They are going to prove as a death knell for the absolute kings who were ruling in almost I'm saying in almost all these places, specifically Austria, Prussia and Russia. So now the people said that we need to get rid of all these ideas which were preached during the time of the French Revolution. Now these people wanted to get rid of the ideas like nationalism, right? They wanted to get the ideas like liberalism, scientific thinking, reason, logic. इन सब को वो उठा के अब बाहर फेंकने की कोशिश करने लग गए. So basically this was a meeting of the people who were anti-liberal, who were anti-national, who were anti-people. So it was a meeting of people who were anti-liberal, anti-nationalism and anti-people. So these were the three major ideas which were prevailing in this particular meeting. अब why liberal? अगर liberal ideas आ जाएंगे तो इनकी बात कौन सुनेगा? Why nationalism? If the ideas of nationalism will grow, then the monarchy is going to go away, because now the people will say the power belongs to us but no one else. So who will listen to the monarchy? So that was the basic idea. And anti-people, because they never saw people as individuals. What they saw people in their states as subjects, जिनको वो अपनी तरीके से अपने हिसाब से एग्जैक्टली मोल्ड कर सकते. जब मन करा उठा के मार दिया, जब मन करा उठा के उनको कुछ थोड़ा बहुत दे दिया. So that is how exactly these people now wanted to do things. और उनका एक बेसिक मोटिव कांग्रेस ऑफ वियना का एक और था, that such an arrangement should be made that no further revolutions in the society should be made, right? No further revolutions in the society can happen, right? तो उन्होंने क्या करा? They wanted to actually establish balance of power. So these victors, they wanted to establish balance of power in the sense that they said that no country should be so powerful in itself that it is able to subjugate another country. कोई भी कंट्री अकेले इतने ज्यादा पावरफुल नहीं होनी चाहिए नहीं होनी चाहिए, ताकि वो दूसरे को एग्जैक्टली सब्जुगेट कर सके या दूसरे के ऊपर कंट्रोल कर सके. दे सेड दैट एवरी कंट्री और एवरी मोनार्की शुड बी इक्वली पावरफुल. इट शुड बी ऑलमोस्ट इक्वली पावरफुल. तो उन्होंने क्या करना स्टार्ट करा, एज यू विल रीड इन द नोट्स ऑल्सो, दैट दीज पीपल, द पीपल स्पेसिफिकली मेटरनिक, what he started to do is he started to distribute the areas captured by Napoleon amongst the victorious people, among the victorious powers, like that is between Austria, Britain, Prussia, Sweden, Russia. इन सबको एग्जैक्टली उसने नेपोलियन के कैप्चर करे हुए एरियाज बांटने स्टार्ट कर दिए. जैसे कि कोई मिठाई हो, कि जैसे कि रशिया को बोला एक काम करो, यू कीप पोलैंड, राइट. उसके बाद एक प्लेस है राइनलैंड, राइनलैंड which is in Germany right now, that was given to Prussia, right. Some places in Italy, they were given to Austria. So basically the map of Europe was now being redrawn, right. So it was being redrawn so that no single power can become so powerful so that they can attack others, so that they can subjugate others. So the basic motive of the Congress of Vienna was to actually suppress the feeling of nationalism. It wanted to bring back the system which was prevailing before the French Revolution. So that was their basic idea. They wanted to secure everything for the benefit of the monarchy in Europe. So that is the basic idea which we need to understand when we are talking about the Congress of Vienna. So Congress of Vienna, in very, very small line, they actually tried to kind of turn back the clock. They tried to turn back the time. They now wanted to stop any further revolutions from happening in Europe by restoring the old order. But we will see, and we have witnessed in the European history itself, that they will not be able to do so for a very long time, because from 1830s the revolutionary mode in the society will start again. The people will now start to realize that how exactly the ideas of liberal age, how exactly the ideas of enlightenment and everything, that is very, very important for their personal benefits, right? आप लोगों के दिमाग में से आइडियाज निकाल नहीं सकते. लोगों को कुछ टाइम के लिए आप चुप बिठा जरूर सकते हो, बट अगर एक बार उनके दिमाग में आइडियाज आ गए तो उसके बाद आप उनको खत्म नहीं कर सकते हो. लेकिन इन बेचारों ने सोचा, मेटरनिक एंड एवरीवन, that we will stop the ideas from spreading, but they were very, very wrong. But because a wave of nationalism has already started in Europe, which they were able to control for 30 years, but ultimately that wave of nationalism will culminate into the unification of Italy in 1870 and unification of Germany in 1871. So that is a very, very important thing which we need to understand about the Congress of Vienna 1815. So that is a major idea about the Congress of Vienna, right? So I have to end my class very, very quickly now because another teacher is waiting, right? Whatever the questions you have, I just wrote them in my notebook. I'll just write them in my notebook and answer you via mail. So please do not take tension. The question was of Nishtha and Anil. I just saw those two questions. So I'll answer those questions through mail. But the point is, in the tomorrow's class, we are going to start off with the topic known as the Industrial Revolution, right? So we are going to do topic, a very, very important topic for world history, Industrial Revolution. So until that time, keep on reading. If you have doubts, you can keep on posting your doubts, and I'll see you people in the next class. Thank you.